Hello everyone and welcome back to Book Time with Elvis with me, Mark, and I hope you're all doing very well. So, earlier on today I'm just kind of minding my own business, looking to see what's on YouTube, what's on BookTube, and a video by Michael K. Vaughan catches my attention. Now, to be fair, videos by Michael K. Vaughan often catch my attention, but today the title of the video really pulled me in, and that's The Rules for Reading. And I see it's a kind of, he's been inspired by a video made by Criminoli, as well as a video that was a response to an earlier video that Michael made by Steve Donahue. And in Michael's video, the recent one, The Rules for Reading, he discusses whether or not there should be any rules for reading and what are his rules for reading. So it's inspired me to talk about my rules for reading, because I'm not going to be presumptuous and tell you that these are rules you should follow. These are just my own personal foibles, if you like, or rules that I have for reading books. And, a few of them are quite similar to Michael's, and I'm sure many of you out there probably have similar ones as well. My first rule, like Michael, in fact, the main rule is read. Read every day. Make sure you read something, or I make sure that I read something. Michael actually says there should be like one rule anyway, which is blanket. If you can read, you should read. And I have to agree with him there. I think it would be fantastic if more and more people decide to take up reading, and it might actually put down the price of books. Anyway, so yes, read every day. This is a big rule of mine, and I try to, change it up a little bit every year or so and try and do different things. So at the moment, I try to read either an essay, a letter, a diary entry, something like that every single day. So whether or not I've had time to read some allotted reading from, a particular novel or whole book that I'm working my way through, I will always read something. So for example, I have the Penguin book of the British short story. I'll pick something out of that and read it. If that's too long and I haven't got enough time, then I'll choose now an essay or a letter or something like that, because I want to make sure that I read something. I think that's very important to keep your what's the word, feet, does it keep your feet in the game? Is that the right expression? I don't know, I've been here too long. Is it, what is the expression? Keep your something in the game. But anyway, that's what you know what I mean. So there we go. So that is definitely an important rule for me as well. And like Michael as well, I don't DNF books. I put them aside, but I don't DNF them, unless there is a caveat there. To me, a book isn't, depending on the length of the book, a book hasn't been started until I reach a certain amount of pages, and that depends on the book I'm reading. So if, for example, I'm reading a very long book and I read 2 chapters, the chapters are very short, and I think, I'm not in the mood. That's generally what will cause this. Not really the book, but the mood I'm in. So I might read a chapter or 2 and then be like, no, I'm really not in the mood for this, so I'll DNF it. But that's not really DNFing it for me, because I'll probably go back to it some point in the future. It just is the case, I'm not in the mood for that particular book at that particular time. Otherwise, I can move through a book. I can get halfway through, 3/4 of the way through, and then put it aside. And that's because I'm not enjoying it at that moment, and I wait for my mood to change and I'll go back to it. And what I do is I always set a time in December to, before the year ends, to go back to the books that I've set aside. Now, I guess I'm very lucky that I don't really need to reread the parts I've already read. I tend to retain information fairly well. And in fact, it's actually happened where it's been a year in between me, for example, starting a book and finishing a book, with a lot of books in between, and I didn't need to go back to read it. So in that sense, I think I'm very lucky. But I will never leave it completely unfinished once I've got over what I deem to be my actual reading a book. And in order to safeguard this, if any of you follow me on Goodreads, you'll find that I don't often have currently reading books on there, because I never know when my mood's going to change, or I'm just not feeling it and I decide to set that book aside, and I don't want it sitting in my currently reading pile for like, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Yeah, it doesn't look good, and I don't like it. So very often I won't put a book currently reading on until I'm over halfway through a book and I'm pretty sure I'm going to finish it. Oh, sorry about that. I had a phone call. Normally people don't call me, but somebody called me, and yeah, it's unusual, especially when I'm filming. I think it's maybe the first time it's happened. So yeah, I don't add books to my currently reading until until I know that I'm going to finish them. So yeah, maybe that's a bit bad, but that's just my habit. And then when I do, I always go through this stage where I put them as currently reading, read, and then I give them some kind of star. But yeah, I think it would become very complicated. Being such a terrible mood reader, it would be terrible. The confusion that would be wrought on my Goodreads list if I put every book I started as a currently reading book would be a disaster. I wouldn't know where I was. But I'm able to. I am able to keep track. At the moment, I've got 3 books on hold till the end of the year, and one of the most significant one, I suppose, would be Possession by A.S. Byatt. Which I may, if I have time, to pick up. But it's because, there are not enough days in the month with all these reading events, and sometimes things just have to be shunted out for a bit. Generally, I find December quite a quiet reading month in BookTube terms. Maybe I'm missing big events or whatever, but so that it does become the perfect month for me to kind of do my spring cleaning or end of year clean out of books that I've left thus far unfinished. So those are my rules, really, rules I have for myself. I think another rule for me is that I try to learn something every day. Whether it's useless information or not, I will try to learn something. I like to take a few moments at the end of the day and say to myself, Mark, what have you learned today? What new information have you got in your head that you didn't have when you woke up this morning? And then I think the day hasn't been wasted. The reading hasn't been wasted. It can be, as I say, from one of the short stories I read, an essay I've read, a newspaper article I've read. It's 99% of the time my new bit of information comes from reading something. Occasionally, of course, it can come about in conversation with someone, but that could come about because that person's read something and they're telling me about it. So it's kind of like reading new information, learning new information through reading by proxy, if you like, when somebody tells me that. And I'm a big one for that. I love telling people, what I learned today. I'm always dropping in on my parents, through the Amazon device and saying, hey, guess what? Guess what I learned today? Or reading bits of books out to them because I find something particularly fascinating, And it's become, as I say, it has become a proviso, a rule for me that I, must make sure that I've learned something or picked something up. So reading every day, don't not finish books, and make sure I learn something, I think for me are the 3 big rules to my reading. Also, though, I think it's important to have fun. I know that probably sounds extremely obvious, but I do think one rule for everybody's reading should be to have fun, especially if you are choosing to read. Life is too short and there are so many books. So I think it's better to be selective. And that's probably why I'm able to not finish books, is because I generally don't pick books that I'm likely to not finish. My star ratings are quite high because I generally tend to pick books I know I'm going to kind of like, somehow or other. And I know I can come under some criticism from time to time by perhaps being slightly narrow in my field of reading, which is something I'm working on. I am actively working on. And perhaps in the future, as I develop more as a as I broaden more my reading horizons, so to speak, we might see we might see an increase in books that are not finished. Actually, even not finishing one would be, of course, an increase in that. But but I do think there's no point. I'm not telling people, of course, not to not finish books, but I do think if you're struggling through something, you shouldn't feel bad if you personally want to give it up, because there are so many books to read. Why waste time in reading something that is giving you nothing? Often books that I have given a fairly low rating to, or books I haven't enjoyed, I still try to find something that book has given me. I don't think anything I've read is a waste of time, even if I didn't enjoy it. Somehow or other, it has still given me some information, or it's shown that I don't like that type of book, which isn't a waste of time, because then I can kind of feel good about avoiding it in future. If there's a particular genre, if I give it a go, one or two books, and I slog through it and I force myself to read it, and once I've done that, I just won't pick them up again. Unless someone whose opinion I really respect says to me, "Hey, Mark, you've got to try this one," then I will give it a go. I will give it a go. But I am such a slave to my mood, and I'm noticing it terribly. I'm in this. I'm running one of the hosts of this Dictember, and I'm behind. I'm like really behind. I've read short stories because I've managed to, as I say, tell myself that I have to read a short story every day, and I'm very glad that I've done that. But my TBR so far is a little bit out the window for the moment. I've still got to read The Big Sleep. I'm really looking forward to that, but the mood takes over. I'm lying in bed, I pick it up, and I'm like, oh, I don't know, and I started reading the third installment of the Charlie Chan books because I really enjoy them, and I thought, wow, that's going to kind of help me out. And I do find this is another, I suppose, rule or at least guideline that I have when it comes to my own reading, is that when I'm in a slump, it's to read myself out of that slump. Because I've noticed certain books, like if you look at my top, I can't remember now, 10, 15 authors that I like, books, or authors that I like, list, they will very often, I'm not going to say always, but very often pull me out of a reading slump. So if I feel like I've had enough of reading, or I can't decide what to read, and I find myself, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, and I'm sorry again for this kind of like topsy-turvy video, but I'm sure I'm not alone in the fact that I start so many books. I will read so many first couple of pages before I decide, no, that's not what I'm in the mood for today. Let's try another one. And last night, as much as I was enjoying Charlie Chan the night before, I just thought I need something. I need something else. And it's turned out so far today, because I can't wait. As soon as I finish this video, I'm going to get back to reading it. Non-fiction. Very often, non-fiction is kind of like a breath of fresh air to me when I've been reading a lot of fiction and novels. And it's special. It's not super popular on BookTube. You don't see many channels, certainly not many channels dedicated to non-fiction. Now, I was a very dedicated non-fiction reader before I joined BookTube. Of course, I had read fiction, I had read classics and all sorts, but 80% or at least 75% of my reading was non-fiction. And I find that I need to get back to it. And at the moment, what's kind of... It's like I need to finish a book. And I need to do that soon in order to get through and finish all the other things I want to read this month. And so I think I picked up this biography of Charles I, and I think that's going to do it for me. I'll talk about it in another video, but I think that's going to do it for me. It's going to give me a kick up the backside and allow me then to go back with a different mindset to reading the rest of the fiction that I need to read this month. So yeah, that's kind of like a mishmash or just ramble really about my reading rules or guidelines that I have for myself. I hope it wasn't too higgledy-piggledy for you, and I'm really interested to know what your own foibles, habits, thoughts on this are, so please leave comments below. Thanks again to Michael K. Vaughan for the inspiration for this video, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Do take care, everybody. Bye for now.